Welcome to the Sports Talk with Devan Wade, always live segment of episode 16 of the Sports Talk with Devan Wade podcast. And as I do that, I want to make sure we're recording. Again, want to say good afternoon or actually good morning here in the Houston area. But if you're around the country, good afternoon. We've been talking about a little bit of a few of the new segments that we worked in. We worked in the Ball and the Fallen segment, and also we've done our headlines. And this is our always live segment here. And my nephew, Eli, is our photographer for that. So if you have questions or comments, we want you to go ahead and chime in. And one of the ways to do that is go to the Sports Talk with Devan Wade page and join the group. You can join the group as well. So those are the ways that you can actually participate and give us your feedback. I want to know which segments you like, what you don't like, what you're interested in, what teams, what cities you would like us to cover, so we can do those things and incorporate those things in the Sports Talk with Devan Wade podcast. Again, I want to be interactive so you guys can be a part of it as well. And one of the ways we did it, we posted the poll question, and I'll ask you, Biscuit, if you take Cleveland out of the equation and you just talk about the Eastern Conference, which team is the biggest threat to go to the NBA Finals? Washington, Milwaukee, Chicago, or Boston? Now, obviously, Boston is the number one seed, but do you feel like Boston is the team that is going to go to the NBA Finals? Well, essentially what's happened is Boston down 2-1. They come up with a big win in Chicago. Do you still feel confident that they will get it done?
No, not at all. I still don't feel confident in Boston. They haven't shot the ball well. They had a good shooting night last night, but for the series, they haven't been shooting the ball well. And the Bulls have those veterans. They have Dwayne Wade. They have Jimmy Butler. So I think they did lose Rondo, so that's going to hurt them. But I still think they're going to be able to bounce back and take control of the series in Game 4. I think it has to be the Washington Bullets. They're up 2-1 on Atlanta.
The Bullets?
2-0. Yeah.
The Bullets. You went retro on.
I did go. The Wizards. Sorry. The Washington Wizards. I think with John Wall, Bradley Beal, those guys are going to get it done, and they've been doing it so far. So I don't see any reason why going forward that they won't be able to win this series. Dwight Howard's not putting up any numbers. Paul Millsap is struggling. So, the Washington Wizards have it going.
Well, when we talked about this in the previous shows and previous podcasts, that essentially you look at Cleveland, they come into the playoffs struggling mightily, but nobody in the Eastern Conference is a threat. Certainly not Boston.
Right.
I think Washington probably is. Toronto is not doing what you thought. I think Milwaukee is a year away, and I think that Jabari Parker being down. Now Milwaukee's a team nobody wants to play. But you talk about having the talent, the Greek Freak and Parker and those guys. I think that they're going to be a special team. Middleton is doing work, but not this year. And so out of those teams listed, I think you're talking about is clearly the Washington Wizards, and that's going to be a fun series. But they have more work to do as well. I don't think Toronto's there. And I'm really not afraid of any of them. The way Cleveland is playing, LeBron had a huge game. But if you have to pick one, and our poster said exactly the same thing. And in the poll question, people did roll with the Washington Wizards. And I think that's exactly the truth. And so I think I'm in line with our listeners and the folks on the Sports Talk with Devan Wade page as well. So if you get a chance, you can still chime in on that poll question. On the local show, talked a lot about the Rockets this morning and their performance last night. So here in Houston, I talked about it this morning. I thought that Lou Williams kept the Rockets in the game, but Todd Gibson for OKC really did a good job of getting it done. He kept him in the game. I don't think, obviously, Westbrook didn't have the type of game he had in the previous game. But one of the big issues that they talked about, and I got some blowback on something that I posted on Twitter. What I said on Twitter essentially was that Westbrook proved that really he's doing more for his team than James Harden, because Harden clearly has the better team. And it was like, well, he took so many shots. He was a ball hog. And people in Houston really forget what it was like when Elijah won, before he got Vernon Maxwell and Kenny Smith and guys that hit those perimeter shots, and before Robert Horry was Big Shot Bob, that he was a guy that was considered a black hole, and you throw the ball into the low post, he wouldn't pass it out of the low post. So we in Houston are familiar with your star on your team not having confidence, and I think that's exactly what happened in Game 1. I think what happened in Game 2 for OKC is those role players got home and they started to play better. You look at Robinson and what he was able to do defensively. And all that being said, they had a great game. All that being said, they still almost lost the game. If Harden hits that shot, their season is all but over.
Yeah, if Harden hits the three, the season is their season is done. They shot 55% for the game from the field. In the first half, they were like at 68%. So they were shooting lights out, the whole team. So they're not going to be able to continue that throughout the whole entire series. So I think when you look at the Rockets, they're in control of this series. It's theirs to lose. I think they'll come out and win Game 4. Russell Westbrook, you can't go 4 for 18 or 4 for 14 or whatever. You can't do it in the fourth quarter. You can't do that. And be considered the MVP. You can't do that.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at with the fourth quarter performances of the Rockets, that's a sign of encouragement. They've really done well in all the fourth quarters in this series, so I think that's a good sign. I want to say hello to my man Nate Jones. He's checking in. Nate and I got into an interesting. I chimed in on something he posted on his page. Pertaining to Aaron Hernandez, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in this edition of the podcast. And again, the podcast will be up maybe later today, early in the morning, episode 17, and you can hear us chime in. So if you have any comments, we will read your comments, answer your questions here on Facebook Live. So again, on iTunes, TuneIn, SoundCloud, join up on the Wade's Word the Sports Talk with Devin Wade page and group. So, Nate and I, we went back and forth about Aaron Hernandez, and that's something we'll get into. We worked in some new segments, Ballin' or Fallin'. We have Hollywood Swinging coming up, and we have a quote of the week. So all of those new things that are incorporated, and I want to know what you guys like when you have a chance to check it out.
Well, tease him with the Hollywood Swinging. Who was it? I thought I saw Martin.
Okay. So here's it, and we'll go over this, and let me pull up my notes. So I'm going to tease you guys. Now, you won't hear this on Facebook Live, but this is something you'll hear on the podcast.
Explain to them what Hollywood Swinging is.
Okay, so Hollywood Swinging is my way of tying in athletes or teams into familiar roles played in movies or shows. So last week we did Boomerang. We did Boomerang last week. This week, here's a question, and you guys can chime in on this. Among these 4 teams, the Los Angeles Clippers, San Antonio Spurs, Houston Rockets, Boston Celtics, who is Martin, who's Cole, who's Tommy, and who's Shanae? Now, I have my answers. You have your answers, so you can think about that. So of the Clippers, the Spurs, the Rockets, Boston, who's Martin, the star of the show, the favorite?
Right.
Who's Cole, who has 0 chance to win the championship? Who's Tommy, who's a mystery? You don't know what they're going to do because nobody knows where Tommy worked or what he did for a living.
Right.
And who's Shanae?
And what's Shanae?
Well, Shanae is a hot mess.
Why Shanae?
Unless you're into Shanae.
And these days and times, man, things are changing.
Okay, Nate Jones says, hey, where does coaching come into play when discussing Russell Westbrook? You know what? Jeff Van Gundy brought this up last night. He gives actually he didn't, but he talked about the fact that people are giving Mike D'Antoni a lot of credit for James Harden, not the same as said for Billy Donovan. I think what D'Antoni did was have, more than anything, he had James Harden buy in, and he bought into the system. So I think that you have to have somebody that your star is willing to listen to. And I think that they roll the ball out and trust Westbrook. To me, the disappointment, I thought Victor Oladipo would be more of a factor for that team. Now, again, this is still a very young team, so I think they'll continue to get better, add a couple pieces. So I don't think all is lost for this team, not this year.
Right.
So essentially,
OKC you're talking about.
Yeah, for OKC. So essentially, I think coaching comes into play when you talk about, getting Harden to buy in, and that's why he got a lot of credit. He bought in, and D'Antoni has done a good job of really having James buy into sharing the basketball. I have to tell you, I did not think James Harden would have this type of performance this season, because again, I was anti-Harden, and you know this, and on the local radio show here on KTSU Sports Talk, I've said this repeatedly. He was a selfish player. He's done a 180 and really surprised me. So from that standpoint,
I think when you talk about coaching, I think when you look at Russell Westbrook and how he broke down in that fourth quarter in Game 2, when they had an opportunity to win that game, and he just kept jacking up shots. That's where you, as a coach, has to come in and say, "Hey, look, you don't have your shot. Stop just jacking up these shots." Because you're killing us. You're killing our team. Trust your teammates.
I don't. But okay, so what's the alternative?
The alternative is
Oladipo? Is it?
No, the alternative is like you did in Game 3. You share the ball. You move the basketball. In the first half, he only had like 9 points. Toward the end of the half, toward the end of the second half, he started scoring more. But before that, he only had like 9 points. He wasn't pressing the issue. In the whole game, he only took like 1 3-pointer. So he saw what he did wrong in Game 2 and came out and corrected it. And he's got to be commended for that. But you cannot. I don't care who you are. You have to trust your teammates. It's not 5-on-1.
If I'm gonna lose a series or lose a game, I'm not gonna lose it with Adams or Cantor. I'm gonna lose it with Russell Westbrook, the MVP, and we know that he'll probably be the MVP.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, and what I think he can benefit from is the Kobe Bryant sort of model. And Kobe Bryant essentially would early in games get his guys involved, but when the fourth quarter came around, he would take over. And I think that way you can see who's feeling it, who's into the flow, guys feel a part of the process. And again, I think those big players play better because they were at home. Let's see if that happens again. If they get off to, and think about this, and let's look at this last night. In the first quarter, Todd Gibson had 12 points in the first quarter alone. Robinson had 9. He had 9 points in the first quarter. So they got off to a hot start, so he was able to really feel comfortable with them. So I think it worked out, and he played a better game, although his missed free throws at the end kept the Rockets in the game and gave them an opportunity.
Right, and that's all because he's tired. That's what happens when your legs get tired. You start missing free throws. You stop using your legs. That's all because he's having to do way too much throughout the game, and he's pushing himself too much and too hard because he's not trusting his teammates.
Well, with that, going to wrap up this segment of the Always Live segment of the Sports Talk with Devan Wade podcast. Episode 17 should be up on SoundCloud, iTunes, or TuneIn later this afternoon. And again, thank you, Mac, Nate, all the Tender Brenda, all the folks who had a chance to tune in. And again, if you answer the poll question, if you have feedback, we certainly like to hear from you guys, hear what you have to say about it, what features you like and which ones you don't. Please subscribe on iTunes, TuneIn, or SoundCloud. I want to thank you guys for spending part of your day with us. Have a great day.